Classic Restos, proudly brought to you by Shannons. Sign up for the Shannons Club, Kenworth Trucks Australia, Pace Farm Eggs, and Holden Certified Service AC Delco Parts.
G'day, I'm Fletch and welcome to the show. It's time for a Ford Flashback in this week's episode of Classic Restos. Here we go, check this out. State-of-the-art 1993 EB Falcon. Back in the days when we used to make stuff. This Falcon has been in the family since day one. It was purchased from Kinghorn Ford in Nowra, New South Wales. It was my mum's partner's car, and I inherited this trusty 4-litre EB around 9 years ago. And it's still a great car today, having only one previous owner. I put this car into the late model classic category, entry level for up-and-coming enthusiasts. Look, she's the basic Falcon GLI. It's done 411,000 kilometres, wind-up windows, basic trim, a little bit like the taxi pack really, but the aircon is icy cold. Only bad thing, it copped some hail damage a few years back, and the hood lining is starting to droop down too, like a pair of your grandmother's doobies. Well, here we go. A Ford tribute episode, this week's Classic Restos, the trusty EB. Now, I could have presented this to you from the Lincoln, but it's already had its 20 minutes of glory in the sun lately, and being an Aussie Ford show, this one, well, we'll let the EB do the job. And let's start the ball rolling with a gentleman in a suburb just north of Melbourne. His name is Nez Demar, and he's a gentleman. He's one of life's gentlemen. He's a great guy, and Nez has been known for many things over the fraternity over the years, with drag racing in the early days. In the later years, Tango and Snowy. Tango is his XW, Snowy is his XY, two immaculate Falcons. Check these out.
3 years ago, I purchased Tango, and basically I took up Colin Wignall from Shepparton. So when it comes to Mustangs and Shelby, Bosses, etc., I know a little bit about them, and I was on the other side of the coin, so I had to ask for assistance, from a GT specialist in Colin, and he came up through my young brother Binak, mutual friend. And we flew up and we looked at this orange XW GT, which was all matching numbers, 70 model. And yeah, long story short, I ended up purchasing, as you know.
Of course, the attention to detail, everything that Nez touches just has to be this way. We look at the proud Clevo sitting there with its factory markings down to the little dab of orange paint or yellow paint there on top there. I mean, these are the things. And if you bought the car brand new back in the day, of course, this is what would have been sitting in your garage that night.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was taught back in those days with my 67 Shelby as well too, which was a Concours car. All the factory markings, etc. But this isn't a Concours vehicle. This is a driver. Now,
keep in mind, when Nez says that this is not a Concours car and it's a driver, to others they might look upon that differently because your standard is so high, and that's the thing with you. Everything you do it is to perfection. Now we look at the car, we look at the paint, we look at the interior. It's probably one of the best examples today that you would find out on the road. As a car to drive, nice?
Yeah, very nice, with the factory power steering, as the Ford report suggests.
Yep.
It's the best thing I've ever done was put it back to original.
Yeah.
It has a factory FMX auto.
Yeah.
I actually brought a 4-speed top loader complete conversion to just, convert, but it's so nice to drive.
This car here, an absolute beast. We're looking at an XY Fairmont 1970, a 71 NES. Now this story here, well look, you know, we can tell that it's got a stock interior which looks superb. It's a factory air-conditioned car as well. Yeah. What lurks under the hood though is just a little bit more than your standard Clevo.
Oh, just a little bit, yeah. It takes me back to my youth as well, and
isn't it wonderful?
It is wonderful.
I mean, you like to go fast, you know what power is all about, but it's a different appreciation at this stage of life. You've got probably 4 times the power that you need under the hood, but hey, who cares? It's there. Who cares? It's nice to know it's there.
Absolutely.
So give us, okay, let's start with this car here. Give us a rundown on what you've done.
Okay, what I have done together with my brothers. So basically, it's ultra white, it's saddle interior. Thank goodness I didn't have to do any modifications to those areas. It was just the driveline. So when I purchased the vehicle, thanks to my young brother Binak, he located the vehicle, and I didn't even know that I was looking for a car. He just said that you should jump on this vehicle. It's unbelievable. So I just basically, together with my brothers, we replaced the driveline and upgraded the diff.
Yep.
So it's registered.
So we're still talking 9-inch, obviously.
Yeah, it's a 9-inch, but it's got 35 spline axles in it. I had a full spool, so I took that out more for drag racing. So put a brand new True Track and new Centerforce clutch, pressure plate, etc. And then when I purchased the vehicle, the reason I purchased it, lovely vehicle, but not only that, it was registered and, you know, with Vic roads all engineered back years and years ago with believe it or not, a big block Ford. So when the guy went out of drag racing, got out of drag racing, he put his drag engine in this XY, which was a bit too much for the street. So I replaced the big block, and I spoke to my brothers, and they said, "Well, you've got the engineer certificate. Why not put another big block in it?"
Yeah.
So I put a smaller big block. And so we went for a 460.
Like Dad, I've always been a Ford man. The Falcon Squire wagon was unloved in 1964, but turns heads today. The Americans call them woodies, but the panelling, it's just fiberglass and plastic. But it's a passion that Shannons understands, which is why my Fords are insured with Shannons. And now, so's the home.
Call Shannons on 13 46 46. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts.
When it comes to cars, there are some brands that will remain with us forever, no matter what. The Holden was always Australia's own car, held high in the hearts of many. Those lines, that chrome, the stories around them, and the people that owned them. From the classic through to the final, you can still trust in genuine Holden and AC Delco parts, available through the Holden Certified Service Network.
Your story began in 1971. It's part of an endless tapestry that tells the story of our nation. It connects innovators to artisans, forests to houses, from the largest of operations to the smallest of outcomes. It's heritage. It's a legacy.
And seeing we're on the subject of GT Falcons, how about an XY and an XA? Well, 2 that come to mind. Peter is the guy's name in the beautiful, quaint country town of Junee in New South Wales. Had an immaculate XY and an immaculate XA GT, and I had the opportunity to catch up a little while ago and interview Peter and his 2 fabulous Fords. You've got a few crown jewels here, haven't you?
Yes, yeah, beautiful.
Okay, let's start with this. What a beautiful car. We have a replica GT here because, as you know, there's more GT Falcons around now than what Ford Australia made.
That's right.
That's correct, isn't it?
That is.
XY Fairmont.
Yep.
That's the beautiful thing about these GTs. They've always had beautiful interiors based on Fairmonts. Give us the rundown on what you've done here, Peter.
It was stripped down to a bare shell, put on a rotisserie, completely stripped back to bare metal, and repainted, of course. And then every nut and bolt was sent away and cleaned and re-zinced. All the bumper bars were re-chromed and slowly put back together.
A factory air car too.
A factory air, yeah.
Always nice to see those factory vents in the dash of an XY.
Very, very rare.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, engine up front, Peter, with the 351 Cleveland, what specs did you go for there?
It's virtually just got a mild cam in it. It's 650 Holly. Yeah, it's not over the top, just the extractors. I grew up when they first come out and couldn't afford one, so as years went by I ended up buying a few GTs over the years, and then I decided I better collect them for a while. That's where it ended up. That's how I ended up with a collection of them. It's just over the years I've always liked the cars and decided to hang on to a few of them. The Phase 3, like, it was the fastest four-door production car in the world at that stage, and you could go and buy it straight off the assembly line, and that's what you were getting. You were getting a fast car straight off the showroom floor, and they were the kings of the road as far as I was concerned. And as you're driving along the road, like, people recognise them, and you'll get the lights flashing at you and thumbs up and that type of thing. And if you pull it up in the street of a night, people are always coming looking at the car, and people are still interested in them, yeah, for sure.
Okay, Peter, we move on to the next crown jewel. We have an XA GT,
Yes.
1973 model.
Yeah,
What a
that's right.
beautiful car.
It is a bit of a rarity, this car, because it has got some of the Phase 4 options in it. It came out from factory with a Detroit locker back end, 4V engine, air, power steering and sunroof, and also quarter glass windows, as you might notice.
Yep.
Which is not too many around like that.
What a beautiful car. This man hasn't got one 4V, he's got two 4Vs.
Right.
You like your 4V Clevos, don't you, Peter?
They are really good motor, mate.
My word, my word. Interesting with the XA too, because often overshadowed by the XB. The XA kind of got left behind there for a while. It's interesting nowadays though, because the XA has really come up and it's very sought after now.
Yeah, well, it's a lot more sought after than an XB, most definitely.
Yeah.
And
Said the first of the new shape. A lot may have sat on the fence back in the day. Won't worry about the XA, we'll wait till the XB comes out.
Yeah.
Honeycomb grille, bit of a different look.
Yeah.
But as you said, the XA really has become very collectible now, hasn't it?
It certainly has. I knew the Ford dealer had it around there, and I've tried to buy it for 15 years of him, and he kept on saying no, no, no. And one day I went around there, and after 15 years of annoying him, I ended up with the car. It just brings back old memories from the early days of having these cars when I was younger. Weren't these particular cars, but I'd had GTs as I was growing up. Yeah, it's just nice to go for a nice little cruise. I don't go far in them, but I just like to go for a little drive around. Yeah, just show them off a little bit, I suppose, about what it is.
Of course, when we think of our Australian-built cars, our Holdens and Falcons and Chryslers, we look back a bit further, and often these marks attach themselves and align with race car drivers, right? And a prominent one for Ford, well, as we know, Al Moffat. Now, back in 2014, at time of filming today, that's 10 years ago. And I had a fantastic opportunity to catch up with Alan Moffat. And look, if I don't interview Alan again, it doesn't matter, because I'm very happy with what you're about to see here. It was at the 2014 Kiwanis All Ford Day. I've got to go back to one of the early Bathurst videos with the interview, talking about driving the Phase 3 and having the welts on your back that stayed there almost a week. What was it like? Describe the feeling, being a young guy and the opportunity to drive one of those Phase 3s back then.
Well, the opportunity was something that I didn't want to lose sight of. We weren't going to get around. All I knew is the very first time that Ford took me up there in 1969 that I was going to spend a lot of my life trying to tackle this wonderful circuit. And fortunately, the checkered flag came my way after my second attempt.
Alan, you're an experienced driver back in those times. What was the first experience like when you went around Mount Panorama? Were you pretty taken back by the track?
Well, the Ford team managers grabbed me on the Friday and said, "Come on, we better show you the circuit." And him and his offsider stopped on Skyline, got out of the car. In those days, there was no barrier on the left-hand side, if you can believe that, what lunatics we had to be. And anyway, they're chatting away, and they saying, "There's the pits and towns over there." I said, "Yes, I can see that." And I'm looking at my watch, and I said, "Well, we were pressed for time. We better get on to the circuit, hadn't we?" And that's when they said, "You're on the circuit." And that was the last time I looked left over Skyline in my whole career. I just said, "You are kidding." And I fortunately got to grips with it very quickly.
Alan, back in the days of the Phase 3 four-door production car at 140 miles an hour from the factory, how much past 140 were you getting out of the Phase 3 down Conrod?
The Phase 3, I think we were up around 170 miles an hour, and the very first car was doing about 160.
What sort of horsepower did you have?
I don't know. They never told me.
Didn't matter. You just hold it flat and off you go.
The engines were done by Bill Sanchioni, and he was absolutely fastidious. And as long as we didn't take them over 6.5, and the moment I could go any relief, I would only run it to 6. How cool was Al? It's great talking to these legends. And speaking of legends, we can't dismiss Dick Johnson. Catching up with Dick Johnson I waited years for, and I had a fantastic opportunity at the Geelong Revival Motoring Festival. He gave me so much time for the interview. We had a great chat. Look at this. You know, Dick, we've had a lot of race car legends on the show. Murray Carter, the Jim Keogh, Johnny Goss, Alan Moffat. First time for you.
Geez, mate, you finally got to me. I can't believe it. You know?
You kicked off in the 60s driving Holdens, FJ, EH Holden. You were running around in 1969. You went on to XU1s in the early 70s. So started as a Holden guy. In 1976 you went to Ford. So you've driven for both camps. What was it like back in the 60s when everything was a little bit less low-key and a bit less low profile?
Well, when I first started, you know, motor racing there was, as far as commercialism goes, there was none. You weren't allowed to have sponsors on a car. Cams who ran the business or ran the sport, you know, having something like a sponsor on a car was unheard of. And then things, obviously, as time goes on, you must accept change, and it got to a point where all of a sudden we were allowed to have a couple of sponsors on a car, but you couldn't go above the lower end of the glass. You couldn't sort of have anything further up. Well, you know, things have changed immensely since then, I can assure you.
That year of 1980 with True-Blu at Bathurst, had you not hit the rock, well, the rock hit you, and you hadn't won on top of that as well, that could have been the end of you for a few years, couldn't it?
Well, I suppose, you know, I never try and think about things that would have, could have, maybe should have, but at the end of the day, I think we're in a situation where we were having a pretty good crack at it, and to say the least, we were noticed, and to be able to go on from there, I think it would have been for us to be able to get at least a sponsor that would sort of see us through the following year. But, you know, that's only supposition. So at the end of the day, we're in a situation where we have to deal with what was dealt with us. And at the time, it seemed like the worst thing that ever happened, but as it turned out, it was the best thing. 1981,
I mean, you've done 7 championships, you've won 5 yourself personally. In 1981, you ran another XD. The transition of the XE, Green's Tough XE, how was that car with the 4 coils as opposed to the XD with leaf springs? Like, was it a dramatic increase in handling when you went to that car?
No, it was a difficult transition because bearing in mind that the rules and regulations, the way they were, didn't allow you to sort of put a proper. Bear in mind, as I say, it was a road car, so the suspension design and that was somewhat different to what would be preferable in a race car. So we had to sort of try and engineer our way around that and without contravening the rules. And unfortunately, it took a while, but we really got to the point where we got ourselves around it.
Dick, between you and Peter Brock, was it always friendly rivalry between the two of you?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when you're on the racetrack, you get out there and you race each other. And that's one thing I must say, that we always raced each other fair. And Brock was a very fair driver, and you got to pay people the respect they deserve when you're shown the same respect.
We've always had a few cars. They're all special. The T-Bird.
Oh, that's mine.
The Combi for when we want to get away. The XR8.
It's going to be a classic.
They're all insured with Shannons,
We've also got Shannon's home and contents cover,
which helps protect our automotive collectibles, tools and memorabilia in the home and garage. If you're motoring enthusiasts like us, it's got to be
Shannon's.
Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts. Call 13 46 46 for a quote.
They may not be making the classic Holden anymore, but the legacy lives on. You can still have a Holden certified service using genuine Holden and AC Delco quality parts at over 180 centres across Australia. Go to holden.com.au to find your nearest centre. Book your Holden in, maintain the pride. If you own a classic or two, make sure they're insured with Shannons. Why not pick up the phone and give Shannons a call for a quote and a chat on 134646, and the Shannons Club awaits you with a whole stack of really cool automotive entertainment, such as their in-house productions, Shannons Club TV, Legends of Motorsport, Driven, End of an Era. You can catch episodes of Classic Restos there as well as Australia's largest automotive online hub. For more information, visit shannons.com.au. What about a forgotten about John Goss Falcon? XB, two-door coupe, the green and the white theme, 302 Cleveland. The John Goss special. Caught up with him. What an interesting character. And another gentleman. It was in 2014 once again at the Kiwanis All Ford Day. Got to give those guys a plug. Used to cover their event a long time ago. They did a great job. Check out John Goss. With me now, we have John Goss. How are you, John?
I'm good, Fletch. How are you today?
Good, mate. Good. Good catching up with you again.
Yeah, well, it is. You know, we don't see enough of each other, mate.
Yeah, that's right. We've got to stop meeting like this, don't we, John?
Yeah.
Now, mate, look, tell us, you go back way before Bathurst. We talked Phillip Island, back when you used to race 55 Fords. Now, rather than talking about cars in the 70s, what were these big bangers like back in the mid-50s to run around a racetrack?
Well, even as a standard car, the custom line was an exceptional car. They were fast, relatively light, although they still retained a separate chassis frame. Good suspension design, hallmark of Ford engineering. I raced my Model 5A 55 model custom line, similar to this one here, at Longford in Tasmania, a very fast circuit, in 64 and 65, and I can remember the car had a speed of over 130 miles an hour.
John, what sort of engines? They were 272s and 292s, right?
Yes, I used the 292 option and we brought it over to 60 thou. We had a bit over 300 cubic inches. Yeah, we probably had 300 horsepower or whatever it was. I can't.
Such a big-bodied car on such narrow tyres. I mean, I think you would have been lucky to be running a 185 back in those times.
Well, I used two wheels, welded them together. It's a bit hard to explain, but we actually used Goodyear racing tyres on that car, which had been developed for the Mustang. But the car was actually, they are a cumbersome car in appearance, but they were fairly light, Fletch, brilliantly engineered, fairly light gauge material in the chassis frame, very good front suspension design. They certainly weren't aerodynamic, but just exciting cars to drive.
Now we're going to round off today's show. Well, this is kind of upsetting a little bit and it's very sentimental, but it comes from the heart. And this is something I want to do for the gentleman as a tribute and to his family. We'll wind the clock back a little bit and have a look at the late Russell Langlands and his amazing original XW GT Falcon. So Russell, how does it feel all these years down the track and you're the owner of this incredible XW GT?
Well, I I haven't thought about that so much because we always used it as a family car, and we've had some wonderful trips in it. I know it's a beautiful car, and I respect it, and I always have, as you can tell by the condition it's in. But when you enjoy something, you look after it. I suppose it's the same as your wife. If you love her, you look after her.
Well, Russell, you've got yourself comfortable. You've parked your bum on the front of the car, and that's okay. Russell's allowed to park his bum on this car because it's his, right?
That's right.
You wouldn't have anyone else's bum on it, would you, Russ?
No. You wouldn't want to sit on a new car these days because you'd be redenting it.
You would. You'd fall through it, wouldn't you, Russell?
You sure would.
What a proud fella we have here. Now, 1970 XW Falcon, we've got a 351 Cleveland, we've got a top loader, we've got a 9-inch rear, we've got the hamburger with the lot here, an incredible car. Now, when you first drove it, those early days, and you'd put your foot down, you'd go through the gears, compared to other cars on the road, you were pretty well king of the street. What was the feeling like when you first experienced that?
Well, there was nothing like it. When I put my foot down, I couldn't believe the power that it had. In first, second, third gear. The thing is with it, Fletch, you can put it in a top gear and it'll keep going up hills. You don't have to change back again.
Well, that's what's called torque.
That's right.
Does it still give you joy to sit in the car as a passenger?
Oh, absolutely. I'm happy to sit in the back seat. At least I can look out and watch everybody looking at the car going past.
And we're back. I'm enjoying this, just going along in the EB. It's wind-up windows and, it's just a standard car, this one, Falcon GLI. But hey, I'm comfortable. The seats bolster well, no squeaks, no rattles. It steers as straight as a die. What a great old car. Having one owner before, that's most of it, I think. It's pretty important to keep an immaculate car. Minimal owners. If you can get cars with minimal owners, that's the secret. The trusty EB Falcon, again, befitting to today's episode. And speaking of which, featuring Nez DeMar with his glorious XW and XY Falcon, Peter's XY and XA GT, the great Alan Moffat on today's show. Wonderful to see that footage again, and leading into Dick Johnson. What a classic. John Goss, wow, he's an interesting gentleman, and it was a pleasure to catch up with John and ending today's show with the late Russell Langlands. I hope you've enjoyed it. Well, until next week, no matter where you're watching Classic Restos from, please ride and drive safe. I'm Fletch. Thanks for watching.
You can like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Classic Restos TV and watch catch-up episodes at shannons.com.au. Classic Restos, proudly brought to you by Shannons. Sign up for the Shannons Club, Kenworth Trucks Australia, Pace Farm Eggs, and Holden Certified Service AC Delco Parts.